This past Monday, I was sitting in my office and my phone rang, and it was a friend of mine, a fellow pastor from southern Indiana, and he phoned wanting to talk. And I could tell by the tone of his voice that something had gone terribly wrong. I said to him, "You don't sound good. What's going on? Did something bad happen?" He said, "Only the worst possible thing that could ever happen to a minister." I said, "Oh, no." And I got to thinking, what's that? What could that be? I said, "Did the best person in your church die? Did you get fired? Did they start a Wednesday night church service?" Worse than that, he said. "What could be worse than Wednesday night church?" I asked him. He said, "A retired minister has begun attending our church." I said, "Look, that doesn't have to be bad. There are lots of retired ministers at Fairfield meeting, and it's wonderful." I said, "Just this past Sunday, a retired minister filled in for me. It was great. I slept in, ate pancakes, read the New York Times." He said, "The retired minister in my church comes to my office the first thing every Monday morning and tells me everything that was wrong with my sermon from the day before." I felt so sorry for him, and I didn't know what to say other than the obvious. I said, "You must find a way to kill him." I said, "I will help with the disposal of the body, because what are friends for, right?" It reminded me how fortunate we are to have former pastors in our Fairfield community. We have such good ones: Mike, Keith, JT, Mark, Rex, JB, Matthias, and let's not forget Mary, whose time as a nun and psychologist in the prison system surely qualifies her as a pastoral peer, whether or not you wish to be numbered among us. After my message last time we were together, you'll remember I spoke of our need to know how to read a map, how to find our way, how to navigate the maze of our lives wisely, charitably, joyfully. Several of you then named those persons in your life who had been maps, who had helped you find your way. A few days after that message, I received an email from one of our former pastors, Keith Wimmersberger, who's just a wonderful person. He wrote, "I've been thinking about your message this past Sunday. It led me to consider the ways we deal with difficulty in our lives. How do we react to stress and distress, loss, emotions, and fears? Our lights, our guides, whether family, teachers, or friends, do indeed provide us with maps which influence the ways we navigate the world. Yet," he said, "some maps are helpful, others less so." Some maps are helpful, others less so. So true. What do we do when the earliest, most profound influences in our lives were unhelpful and unhealthy? First, let me say this. While aging can result in our movement toward emotional and spiritual well-being, aging is no guarantee of health and happiness. Some early experiences are so traumatic. Some of our first maps have exacted such a toll on our lives, they continue to negatively reverberate well into our adult years. Just as wonderful people bestow an enduring blessing on the lives they touch, so too can mean and cruel people bestow a persistent blemish on the lives that they touched. Some of our first maps can keep us forever lost if we let them. If we keep consulting them, if we still let them guide our way. Now, I will say something that sounds cruel, but it's nevertheless true. Once we realize the damage done to our lives by our earliest maps and earliest influences, once we realize and recognize that damage, we can no longer use that as an excuse to remain unhappy. Now, because we are aware, it is incumbent upon us to become healthy. The warranty has expired. It is now our responsibility. We now have full ownership of our lives. Years ago, I was in a shop in Paoli, came across a replica of a map from Orange County. The map had been created in the 1820s. As you can probably surmise, Orange County in the 1820s had only a few rough roads, but what ones there were on that map, along with the larger creeks and rivers. Now, what would you think if I insisted that that 200-year-old map was the best, most accurate guide for navigating Orange County today? You would think I was crazy, that I was foolish, and you would advise me to buy a smartphone with a map application, which shows not only every creek and river, but also every home, every business, anything you need to find. But I refused to do that, and whenever lost, would still blame the maker of the 1820s map, saying I wouldn't be in this mess if they had drawn a better map, if they had done a better job. To which you would likely reply, they did the best they could with their limited knowledge. Stop blaming other people when you're lost and get a better map. We tell this to Ned Steele every time we take a motorcycle trip, who refuses to get a smartphone and has discovered, much to our chagrin, that his folding phone does not have a map application. And so half of our trips are spent chasing down Ned, wondering where he has gone. Our mistrust of new maps is not only a religious phenomenon. It happens a lot in religion because of the nature of religion. It is the ancient passing on wisdom to the current generation. That's just the nature of religion. But that isn't the only place that we mistrust new maps. It is also present in our political lives, when we cling stubbornly to parties and principles because our parents and grandparents did. In both major parties can be found people whose worldview is so dogmatic, so fixed, they are unable to view life through any lens other than the ones through which they have always peered. We are learning, aren't we, that while fear and fundamentalism take many forms, the consequences are always the same: ignorance and stagnation. Friends, think carefully about the maps you consult, which maps you still permit to guide your way. Do they reflect reality? Do they take into account where you are in life and where you wish and need to go? We needn't ever be afraid to set down an old map and pick up a new one. It is neither disrespectful nor unkind to realize the directions you once received are no longer useful, and to lay them aside and follow others. Well, I went to school with a young man named Kelly. He was my age. We graduated together. And Kelly was an odd duck. An odd duck. Despite our science teacher insisting that there were only 9 planets, Kelly did not believe that and would raise his hand and say, there are far more planets than we realize. We just don't have proof yet. He said there are billions of planets, and we would all laugh at Kelly. And he could never get a date because everyone thought he was so unusual. Now I ask you, who was right? Who was right? Yeah. So, as you move forth into this broad, bright world, you will encounter things that will blow your mind and seem incredible. And you will laugh. But remember this universe and the people and animals and plants in it are so beyond our understanding that all of life is an absolute and radiant miracle. So enjoy it, friends. Open your minds and consider every day that life is far grander than we imagine. Amen. Turn and greet friends.